Coming straight off of the latter half of season 6, we have the third episode, Halloween related, of Gumball. The second one being the scam and the first one being, no, not the Halloween, just Halloween. The first episode to not have the prefix the in the beginning of the episode's title. So does this live up to the hollow hype of its previous Halloween episodes? We're gonna find out.
Halloween, it's Halloween, Halloween, it's Halloween.
Now remember all the rules on the art of trick-or-treating.
If you're cute as can be, you'll get candy for free.
And if you fill these up, start eating.
So for about the first minute of the episode, we start off with a musical that goes through all the cliches, deconstructing a few things and basically giving commentary on how the modern public views the holiday in general. I found it to be a little on the nose though. It feels like it leans too much on subversion and relying on the fact that the show wouldn't play Halloween straight, except it did. The episode's Halloween. I guess it also has to do with my bias against musical numbers in episodes and considering where this episode would go, after watching it not knowing it was going to be a musical number, color me unimpressed. At Gumball's best, it balances the dark, under the radar, cynical, subversive side with its completely played straight, fundamentally funny and passionate about animation side. At its worst, it panders to the lowest common denominator fans and adds a sprinkle of fourth wall meta quote-unquote smart humor, and with the song telling me that Halloween is completely commercialized and has nothing to do with horror, but rather the latest outfit, and that trick-or-treating is about the candy rather than the fun you would have actually going out trick-or-treating, and that businesses make a ton more money tacking on horror to things that people would otherwise buy for much less. You tell me what type this is. Now, I'd imagine a smart show wouldn't feel the need to spell out its point. I'd also imagine a creative episode would rather show than tell the points it wants to show. Now, on the positive side, I do enjoy the costumes we see, from Pikachu Banana Joe, to Captain Planet Tobias, to Sailor Moon Mr. Smalls, to God of War Richard. We also see a lot of similar outfits from previous Halloween episodes, but also some others, like for example, Anton re-wears the same outfit from The Party. So Gumball wonders why Carrie isn't out on Halloween despite being a ghost, and that's a valid question, considering back in Halloween, she knew about a secret annual undead ghost party. You would think Halloween would be her thing, just in the underworld. Well, in this episode, they go the opposite route. Well, at least we have some good jokes to keep us focused on the main story at hand, right?
It's like saying Mr. Small would miss out on a psychic crystal convention.
Psychic crystal convention? Where? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah?
Did you tell him all that with your mind?
No.
Then what did you tell him?
Yeah, it's not appropriate to say out loud.
Oh boy. Now obviously we're talking about the show that wouldn't mind trying to find ways around the radar for a good joke. These jokes work out well because when you get older, you start to understand the commentary behind the episode or the underlying layer of the joke. With this joke, you get neither. It's inappropriate because Gumball said so. Mind you, this is the same show where we got jokes like
That was terrifying.
Yeah, well, at least your soul was going upwards.
underwhelming was the musical number that had to hammer in the point that Halloween isn't exactly how it's depicted in the media. This just made things pathetic.
It's meant to be scary, and it's not anymore.
Well, sure it is.
I don't mean how frightening your dental hygiene is after illegal amounts of candy.
What do you mean,
However, I found these jokes to work much better. In fact, despite what many of you may think based off of my Matchmaker versus the Show review, I actually enjoy Gumball and Carrie's dynamic more than Darwin and Carrie's dynamic. I just thought that the latter couple would work well together because Gumball already had a thing with Penny. However, with the former dynamic, Gumball and Carrie, we see a lot of that early season Gumball, who was a lot more curious, a lot more open, and didn't take social cues well, contrasted well against Carrie's dark and introverted and, for lack of a better word, emo personality. It makes for a good story, and it also makes for good comedy, which is why with the Matchmaker, it made things work great even when the focus wasn't on Darwin. So Gumball and Darwin hold their hands up for Carrie to show them why their Halloween is ruined, but while she focuses on the upper hand, I'm seriously curious about the placement of the lower hand. You guys look like you're presenting the fact that you have knees. So we get to Halloween reference number 1. Mr. Candy referencing Candyman, a monster you can call by saying their name 3 times within this episode apparently. And it's actually one of the weaker jokes within this special. I suppose it works well if you watch the movie, and unlike the sweaters, you can understand everything you need to know here without learning tons of different references. On the animation side, I love the way that Mr. Candy zooms away via bees. I just feel like there's a better joke in there than, his name is Mr. Candy, but he doesn't give candy. We go on to the next reference, A Nightmare on Elm Street, with Hank. Yes, his name is Hank. He works in construction and construction accessories. He's running away from something and he meets the fingernail ghoul.
Who you?
Your worst nightmare! Wait, you're not scared of me?
No, not really.
I mean, I wouldn't be scared if a dude put his hand on my shoulders and then started to laugh. Creeped out? Ready to fight? Yeah. Scared? And pissing my pants? No. I suppose the episode is going the route of having all of these characters be incompetent at, well, their passion, or I don't know what you would label this as, but I think the episode would be much funnier if every ghoul actually tried their best to scare rather than what you see here. Obviously, after one flub dream, as far as this episode shows us, the fingernail dude is very upset that he can't scare the way that he used to. This whole angle wasn't really worked the best when the Flying Dutchman did it, and it surely doesn't work out here either. So basically, he tries to scare Hank more, but it doesn't work, proving Carrie's point. I am also guessing that they wanted to go the whole classic monsters don't bode well in today's environment sort of angle, but the issue here is that the point itself doesn't really work well with the execution. Imagine for a second, if we were doing the whole classic monster doesn't work well in today's environment. A better approach would be for said monster to be coached into being able to scare in a modern environment. Or maybe you can scare everyone in Elmore except one person, who would be Gumball or whatever main character you want to use. The fact is that all of this points back to Carrie's point, and that doesn't seem like the best approach. And once you learn about what happens later on in the episode, you'll understand my point more. But until then, next reference, It Follows. This seems to be the one that had the most lost potential. The way that he follows Rocky throughout this episode, there was so many ways they could have approached this, and I can think of two myself. The first way was to be ultra wacky with the way Rocky tries to escape this shadowy figure. You could have had tons of jokes there. The second way was to have him legitimately scare everyone in the end, and he becomes the main ghoul, the main antagonist of the episode. They kind of go the first route, but it says what the first ghost did, so it doesn't really work out well. Plus, in my opinion, it wasn't that funny. Also, with the shadowy figure sharing the same music as a title card, I thought he'd be more important. What also disappoints me about this is that the particular monster was dragged out for more scenes than the others. And before you get on me for saying that Gumball may not be able to do horror correctly, that is incorrect. Forget Halloween, forget the scam, let's talk about The Joy. The Joy was an episode revolving around the Joy virus that was spreading throughout the school that Simeon was actively trying to avoid. It had tons of horror elements in it. It was incredibly funny, incredibly engaging. Simeon seemed truly scared, but most importantly, the story's idea and concept felt worthwhile and something to expand upon. This here seems like someone just loved the idea of those Gumball episodes where it's just a bunch of skits, but someone had the smart idea to try to tie a fully cooked plot around it.
See? No, you're ruining it! It's a cast videotape you watch on a VHS player!
Yeah, anyway, I got a life to live. Is there any way we can stream it?
Now, out of all the monsters, this one I enjoyed a lot, despite its particular part of the story completely ruining the immersion of Gumball either being in the 80s, 90s, present day, or future. For this one, it works well because the characters were the ones who knowingly messed it up because of the way that the original plot would work. Compare this with, ooh, I scarily put my hand on your shoulder. You'd think the joke there would be his greatest nightmares would actually turn out well. Like, do this with Tobias or something, where his fear is never being a major character. That could work. Or even compare this to the Candyman, which honestly that should have never been a major character. Going back to Rocky, as you can tell from the pattern, he also escapes his monster in an underwhelming way. But folks, we make history today. In this very review, I found the very first episode, not the shippening, not the sweaters, in which I actively enjoy Sarah's company. Wow, this episode just seems to do everything in such an abnormal way. Now that's scary. We have Scream call Sarah to try to scare her, but it fails because she's used in the way that she really is. The incredibly weird and creepy nerd girl who has no friends because her reality is warped by the ultra misleading anime and internet stories that she reads, to the point where she's so unironically the type of person that you would never want to run into in real life. But for this one singular episode, it works.
Someone's at the door. I gotta go.
No, there's not. I just locked all the doors and windows. Can't hide, because the first place I'd look would be in your basement.
You're here?
I thought you wanted to watch a scary movie.
So then we get into the backstory, because so many people are now too busy and caught up in the modern world to be scared. Most monsters had to quit scaring to get day jobs. I guess then you would ask, what's the point of getting another job you hate if you weren't getting paid for the first job, but let's not go down that rabbit hole. It also has somewhat of a Shrek vibe to this, the first movie anyway, with the way they explain it. I understand, however, that this episode was trying to build up to that, but the way it was fleshed out to be what this episode was, rather than a montage, really makes me think that this was a super budget friendly episode. They either didn't know what to do with this concept or something was miscommunicated, and they're already contracted for X amount of episodes, and this was just one of those concepts that just seems like a way to pad out the deal. Honestly, tell me you can't see this entire episode shrunk into a 3-scene montage of them doing all of this while they get into what the episode is actually about. Season 6 has been pretty rocky to me, no pun intended, and episodes like this tip the scale into unfavorable territory. But what truly makes this quite possibly one of the worst episodes I've reviewed this year is the next scene.
We need to help them get their scare back.
An ancient spell that will make everyone frightened of them again, but it needs the permission of one living being.
Well, if I don't have to do anything, then yeah, you've got my permission. Where do I sign?
What? Okay, all gloves are off. This episode is very stupid and padded out, but that scene right there made Carrie look like an idiot. There's tons of ways for Carrie to have logically done this. The barrier of entry didn't even feel like something to fight for. It felt like something Carrie would have easily done off screen. Are you telling me there was no one willing or dumb enough to convince to perform this spell? And this is why you're upset on Halloween? Because you can't get one person to agree to do this spell? I don't even want to hear the fact that this is for kids or something, because the beginning of this episode wanted to be so smart and so clever, and wink wink, nudge nudge to the adults in the room. Hey, we know what Halloween means. Hey, we know that commercialism has infiltrated holidays. Hey, we know that treats actually make people very fat when highly consumed. Get out of here with all of that. This episode was poorly put together, and honestly put Carrie under the bus as an idiot. The icing on the cake is that it just hard cuts to essentially the episode being solved. No fight, no effort, no anything. Not on the characters, not on the staff, no effort put in by anyone. So why should I make an effort to enjoy it? Despite some jokes being funny, and Sarah being used well, and despite the honestly cool to see references, and by the way, side note, just because something is referenced competently doesn't mean we should blindly praise it, I'm calling a horror themed spade a spade. This is the worst episode I've seen in season 6 by far, and I would not be surprised when I do my top 10 best and worst episodes I reviewed that this is in the top 3. It ends with them, like I said, hard cutting to the problem being solved. No fight, no anything. Even though it could have been solved at any time, and you could have cut out any monster, there wasn't even a big conflict in here, and that was the ghoul. I'm honestly done talking about this episode. It has been a while, but this episode legitimately annoys me. If you wanted to do a Halloween episode, do it. But don't hide behind some phoned in commentary and references slapped together. This sucks. To me anyway. But you know me, I want to hear all thoughts about this episode in the comments down below. Special thanks to the patrons of October. And until next time, take care. Alpha out.